Hello to all of our global attendees, and thanks so much for joining us today to tackle a topic that's more and more relevant each day: how to stay connected and organized while working remotely. So before we get started, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive the recording and slides via email after the webinar. And all of you are in listen only mode, but feel free to ask questions in the GoToWebinar questions panel, and we'll answer your questions at the end in the Q&A session. And if you have any follow-up questions, make sure to reach out to us on our online community forum. So let's jump in. So first, you're going to hear from our head of people operations, Anna Binder, about how we've been tackling the present moment at Asana. Next, you'll hear from Josh Zirkle and me, Nikki, to get tips and best practices and how some of those can look in Asana. And then we'll wrap with a live Q&A. So with that, I will hand it to you, Anna.
Hi, everyone. It's Anna Binder from Asana. I run the people team here. As you can see, I'm working from home. You might hear my dog in the background, and you can see my living room. This is all of our new realities, and I think we're handling with it with as much grace and equanimity and humor as possible. I guess first I want to talk about how, as we started approaching our response to the coronavirus about 3 weeks ago, we started out by setting up some guiding principles. There was a lot of information. It was quite stressful. We didn't have a lot of planning for the plan. So we thought it would be good to ground ourselves in guiding principles. The first was prioritize the well-being and trust of employees. Well-being and how to prioritize was really the harder part of this. How do we know we didn't really have a perfect framework or a guidepost on that. The trust part was a little clearer. These are employees that we had hired. We know them, we knew them. We could just tune into how people were feeling and figure out a way to meet them where they were at. Data can be correct or incorrect, but feelings can never be wrong. Number two, we wanted to make sure that we were neither overreacting or lagging behind. To do so, we partnered closely with peer companies and other people we trusted, companies of similar size and employee footprint, to figure out what and co-create what we were all doing so that we were in support of each other. The third, and this was absolutely critical, our goal was to communicate readily and calmly. A lot in the media was creating fear and frenzied emotions for people. And we wanted us at Asana to be a voice of calm reassurance and clarity for our employees. I looked back on our different communications just this morning and saw our very first message was mid-January. We continued to give guidance right around the beginning of February, and late February, early March, we started communicating on a daily basis. Since we've gone to fully work from home for all of our employees globally mid last week, now we've really shifted our communications to help people be successful in their changing reality. And then the fourth thing that was our guiding principle was mitigate the impact to business productivity as much as safely possible. Well, what does that mean? I always like to say, if everything is important, nothing is important. So in this case, we've really sent the message to employees that the most important thing is their health and well-being and taking care of their families. And so in order to do that, figure out what are the things that absolutely need to be prioritized in this new world, and what can be deferred or delayed or just decided that it doesn't really need to happen. So again, that was our fourth set of guiding principles. Next, we put together an internal decision-making team that included facilities and IT, the communications team, finance, legal, as well as myself and the CEO. We meet daily at 5 o'clock every day. We consider topics that were new from the previous day, and as you can imagine, There were so many that came up in every 24-hour period. We considered the options that faced us and we made decisions and then co-created the communication together. We spent a lot of time thinking about tone and grounding every decision in our guiding principles. Finally, and this is really, really key for us, I put together a group of 10 heads of HR at very similar companies at right around the end of February. They were all technology companies based in San Francisco with offices around the world, ranging from 500 to 3,000 people. We have a 30-minute call 3 times a week in the morning, and we have constant email communication going on with each other. We share our learnings, our decisions, our timelines. We even shared a lot of the content that we were using and the FAQs. That way, we could both learn from each other, but we could move really, really fast. So, reflecting and what I wanted to say as I was wrapping this up, we're definitely not on the other side of this. From a human impact, maybe we've actually not seen any of the worst of it. But now that we're all work from home and many of our employees, in fact, most of them are in a shelter in place mode in their own cities, we're focused on making sure that employees feel supported while we're facing all these new responsibilities, homeschooling kids, co-working with either roommates or partners or spouses. And just make sure that people know that we're in it together and we'll get through it together. With that, I will hand it back over.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. And thank you in general to the Asana team for all the guidance you've been providing and hard work there. It's really showing. So just wanted to give a quick hello and introduce myself. I'm Nikki, and I am on the content marketing team here at Asana. I work on content to help educate our customers to go from just using Asana for the first time through being a champion. So you might see my work on the guide or on videos. You might recognize me from YouTube. Now you can meet Josh.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh. I lead Asana's global community program. We create all the programs to bring Asanas closer to our customers and for customers like you to connect you with each other so that we can have conversations around teamwork, collaboration, and productivity. I also used to be a productivity consultant, and I spent a lot of time working with people in their home offices on how to stay productive. So the topic around working from home and working remotely is one that I am super familiar with and is near and dear to my heart. And as Anna shared, we are definitely in a new world of work together, and we on the Asana team are adapting to it just like the majority of you are if you're new to working from home. Luckily for us, we have a tool like Asana to help make things easier, but given that not all of us are used to working from home, we thought it might also be great to share some real life tactics and strategies to help you and your team navigate the work from home world. Of course, as Nikki mentioned, we'll leave some time at the end for your questions and ways that you can participate in the conversation even after the webinar is over. So let's talk about some of the general concepts that can help you and your team navigate more effectively the world of working from home. The first concept to share is clarity. What do we mean by clarity, and why is it important to help you and your team work more effectively remotely? Well, clarity is really about having everyone on your team be on the same page together about what your goals are, what you're working towards, who is responsible for the different actions that ladder up to your goals, and knowing when those tasks that ladder up to your goals are going to be worked on. Having this sort of clarity on your team is always important, even if you're all working together in the same office and sitting next to each other, but it becomes really critical when your team is not right around you. Sometimes when you don't have a manager or coworker next to you or nearby, it can be really easy to lose track of your priorities. And you may even start to wonder, well, what should I be working on next? What's the rest of my day look like? You may not have good answers to those questions, and that's because you don't have a lot of clarity. So especially for me as a manager of a team of my own, I never want to be in the position of micromanaging my team or even needing to ping them to find out what they're working on. So instead, each of us on my team documents our biggest priorities that we're going to be working on in a single weekly task which we then discuss during our now virtual Monday morning stand-up meeting. We go around the room, virtually of course in this case, and talk about what our priorities are. By doing this, we're all aligned on what each team member will be doing, and we can also see where there are opportunities for us to collaborate or combine work and basically just help each other. It also sets a really clear set of expectations around what we are expected to complete during a given week. So for me as a manager, I can feel really confident that all of my teammates and I are on the same page about what we are going to be doing during a given time period. So if you or your team are working from home, definitely set aside some time with your team to make sure everyone is clear on what each other is working on. This could be in a project or a task in Asana. This could be via a conversation in Slack or even in just a shared doc. The key point is to have a single shared place where everyone can refer back to when they aren't sure what everyone is working on and what you're working towards together. Nikki, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of those tips really resonate. And so I'd like to show you how this could look in Asana. So without further ado, let's take a look. So what you're seeing here is actually Asana's content team's main team project. So in here, we've got discussion topics, we've got monthly priorities, any out of office time, and kind of some of the foundational docs and the key results that we want to hit for an episode. So what I'm going to show you is my monthly priorities task. So in this task, you'll see that I've got a bulleted list of my top priorities. And so usually towards the end of every month, I like to start listing these out, and you can use Asana's rich text formatting. And this is where the magic of Asana really comes in, because you can mention existing task projects or even teammates. So maybe I want to add something to my initiatives, like getting pulled into a remote work webinar, which we already have a project for. So now that's reflected in my priorities. And you'll also notice, so we saw that this task lives in the content team discussion project, but it also lives in my one-on-one project with my manager. And this is really great because it allows us to check in every single week when we meet to see if I'm on track, if my bandwidth is looking good. And then an additional way I use this task is every Monday when we have team stand-up, I pull this up and cross-reference it with all of the tasks in my tasks for the week and make sure that what I'm assigned and working on is actually corresponding to what my priorities are. And if not, then maybe we need to shuffle. So that's what it can look like if you want to start trying this today. And now I'm going to show you what it can look like when you do this long-term and how beneficial that can be. So I'm going to do a quick advanced search, and I'm going to search for Nikki's priorities. So that's what all of the tasks are always named. And then I'm going to just search for the ones assigned to me so that way I don't pull in any other information. So now you'll see that the search has pulled up years of my priorities tasks. And this is really great if you're just trying to reflect on a quarter or a year's worth of work as you're going and preparing for reviews, if you need to update your resume, if you want to bring things up with your manager. And especially in times like these, you know, it can be a great reference to have of all the stuff you've accomplished. So with that, I will turn it back to Josh for our next tip.
Thanks, Nikki. So after you and your team have gained clarity on what you and your teammates are working on, the next core area for you and your teammates to focus on for working from home is communication. Now, when you are at your desk at work and you can just swivel around in your chair to talk to a teammate next to you or go tap someone on the shoulder, communication is really easy. But when you are suddenly working from home, stay in contact, using the right channels to do so, all of this becomes extra important and, of course, extra challenging. Most teams have a lot of communication tools at their disposal. And this is great because it gives you lots of opportunities to connect, but it can also be pretty confusing and challenging if your team hasn't decided in advance what each channel is for. So you'll want to set some guidelines around what communication tools you're using and what each tool is intended to be used for. For what purpose is each tool meant to solve? So for instance, at Asana, we use Slack for quick questions and chit chat. We use Hangouts or Zoom for our video calls, and we use Asana for comments, questions, or decisions that are related to projects or tasks. And actually, the only time we use email is for when we're connecting with external vendors or partners. So spend some time with your teammates really thinking about and discussing the array of communication channels and tools at your disposal, and agree together on which channel is for what purpose. Kind of like how we've done it at Asana, saying this channel is for this communication reason or purpose. Then make sure to document those guidelines and put them in a place where everyone on your team can refer back to them really easily. Also, especially in the work from home world, when it comes to communication and your team isn't right there next to you, don't be afraid to over communicate. Make sure just to send out as many comms are necessary so that you and everyone else on your team stays in the loop and feels confident about what's going on. Of course, there's more to teamwork than just communicating around completed tasks or what's coming up. Make sure to set some time up to just hang out or be with your team. It can be pretty lonely working from home, and it's hard to have that same sort of water cooler feeling and just the general office chit chat when you aren't physically there together. So set up a quick team call or video chat once or twice a week just to check in and see everyone's faces. You don't have to have a detailed agenda for what you're going to quote unquote accomplish during that meeting. It's more just to hang out and be together. So this could be over breakfast or over lunch, or even just like a coffee chat in the afternoon, but set up some time to just be with each other. Nikki, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, those are really great tips, Josh. And I think your point about figuring out what you can use each tool for and what conventions you want to set is really important. So there's a lot that I could show here for this, but I thought I could show our viewers a little bit about what it looks like when you're using Slack and Asana together. And so I'm going to walk you through that flow, and you can see how smooth it is. So I think this is happening a lot. You know, we've got a lot of people that are relying on Slack and previously were, and especially now. So, you know, this happens, right? You get a random question and it's like, hey, Nikki, can you review my slides for the customer event? And it's like, yes, but I'm currently presenting in a webinar right now. So I know that when you're trying to track things across lots of different tools like email, Slack, Asana, you're kind of adding that cognitive burden to remember like where each thing was. So for me, I like keeping all of my actionable to-dos in Asana, and that makes it really easy to know that when I head into my task that everything in there is really truly what's on my plate for the day. So you can use the Asana for Slack integration, and all you have to do is go to Slack's marketplace and install it. And then when you click the More Actions menu, you'll see that there's this handy dandy create a task. So I'm going to create a task out of what Josh asked me to review. So it'll be review presentation slides. You can assign it to anyone, but I'll keep it assigned to me. Then for the project that I'm going to add it to, I'm going to add it to the content staffing team project. So this is where my manager can see what everyone on the content team is working on. So as new work comes in, she actually has the full picture of all of the tasks we're working on to make sure that no one's overloaded and that it actually makes sense to assign whatever task to whichever teammate. So then you can select a due date. So I'll make sure I get Josh that review today. And then in the description, you can see it not only includes Josh's original message and the link to the attachment provided, but it also has this link back to Slack. So that way, the next time I'm looking at this in Asana, I can jump back to Slack if I need that additional context. So then you go ahead and create the task. And then it'll also post it in the channel if you want. So that way Josh can see, oh, Nikki created a task for this. So now I know I don't have to go ping her and see if she's reviewed it. Then when you're actually looking at it in Asana, so here it is in the content team staffing project that I assigned it to with a due date for today. And then I can fill out these custom fields. So it's going to be a small review. And then for my manager, I can set the custom field so she knows what type of work it is. So this will be a review. And then of course you can see the link to the doc as well as the link back to Slack. So that's what that can look like. Back to you, Josh.
Thanks, Nikki. Super handy using the two tools or the different communication tools that you use together with Asana, because it can, again, make sure that the right communication is happening in the right place. So Nikki, thanks for walking through that with us. Now, the last area around working from home productivity is that we'd like to discuss is cadence. When we go into our offices, many of the typical rhythms of work are already in place. We know what hours the office is open, so we know what time to show up for work. Lunch typically happens around the same time for everyone, so we know when to go eat. When the day is over, it's pretty clear because hopefully everyone goes home. The routine is essentially already set up for us, so it's really easy to follow. But when we start working from home, none of these structures are in place. Boundaries get really blurry. For instance, it's easy to start work right after we wake up because there's no commute. Then we forget to eat lunch at a normal time because there's no one around to have lunch with. And then suddenly looking over at the chair, there's a bunch of laundry there, and that seems like a big priority. And then our workday doesn't really end at a typical time because we don't have to leave and there's no commute. So why not just put in a few extra hours? All of this really gets very, very blurry at the end of the day and the beginning, and your workday can start to feel really long and unstructured. So it's important to stay productive, to set a proper work cadence for you and for your team in this new world of working from home. Agree with your team what all of your working hours are, and then make sure that this is really clearly communicated to everyone. This could be communicated via your Slack or Asana profile. You could put it on your calendar or even in your email signature if that's appropriate for you. In structuring your daily cadence, make sure you have regular times when you take breaks or have lunch. Imagine the similar structures that you'd have if you were in an office and replicate those back to your work from home life. Of course, things can be more flexible since you have no commute time, but it's still a good practice to have some boundaries that you set to structure your day. One great thing that you and your team can do to help everyone adapt to working from home is to recognize that this is new for most people and start collecting tips from across your team about what's working for them in one central spot. That way you've got a library of work from home strategies that if someone is struggling a bit, they can refer back to this library and look at tips that are working for other people that they know. Since the experience really varies from person to person and situation to situation, each team member sharing what really works for them can be super valuable for the whole team as everyone adapts to this new work style. So in a doc or in a project in Asana, create a repository of work from home tips that everyone can refer back to and contribute to when they need to receive or offer inspiration to others for working from home. Nikki, over to you.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I, over the weekend, spent a lot of time thinking about how I wanted to structure my schedule for this week to make it a little more optimized from last week. And I think, kind of combined with the communication tip previously, this Asana tip will be pretty helpful for you. So, and it's very easy. So we're going to just start with a simple adjustment you can make in your profile settings to convey when you might be away, when you're being notified, and where and when people can reach you. So you'll just click on your handy avatar in the top right corner, and then you'll head to My Profile Settings. So this is the menu that it'll pull up, and you'll see that I've got details filled out about who I am, my role, and how I like to be addressed. And then also in this About Me section, I've got my working hours, where I'm based, and then I also even have preferences about, I like tasks if someone has a to-do for me versus, Slack if you just have a quick question. I know other colleagues put their DISC assessment profiles in here, so really any additional context that you want to share with your team. And now you can also set your away setting, so you'll see that it changes how your avatar looks, so it's a little grayed out, so it's clear to teammates like, hey, Nikki's maybe not going to respond to this right away. And you can set the date range. You can even choose if you want notifications while you're away. I know a lot of folks at Asana will indicate in their name if they're going to be away, so maybe they say that they're, working from a certain time zone that they normally aren't, or they're at an appointment. So feel free to, utilize your description however needed. And then to tease an upcoming feature, we have Do Not Disturb mode, which will be coming out later this month. So you'll see this in the notifications tab, so just one over from where we were adjusting our profile settings. And you can pause notifications completely and then come back and unpause them when you're ready to go. And then you can also set a Do Not Disturb schedule. So for me, that might be 7 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. And that way I'm not receiving any notifications, and there will even be a little icon so that way my teammates know that, hey, Nikki's not going to see this just yet. And then you can also set default days that are always on Do Not Disturb. So maybe you want to set the weekend, or if you know that you're on duty for taking care of the kiddos on a Wednesday, then you can set that too. So really customizable, and then just make sure to save your changes. And that's how you can do that in Asana.
All right, thanks, Nikki, for sharing how we can let everyone know our work cadence in Asana. Great. So while this is in no way an exhaustive set of work from home strategies, there's so many, we cover just a few. By focusing on clarity, communication, and cadence, you and your team can start to work together more effectively, regardless of whether you're working from an office or work from home. All of these strategies and tips still apply. They just become extra important when all of you are working remotely. So now we will turn things over to you. Do you have a question about working from home? Nikki and I want to hear it. Just add your question or comment into the questions box.
So we've actually had quite a few come in, and it looks like people are asking for tips about creating a new routine and what that can look like.
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to recognize that creating a routine, whether it's in the normal, not work from home, not stressed out over coronavirus world, or in this new one, takes some time. Routines typically take a while to adopt. I think this is where you start looking at what worked for you in your previous working from the office world and what can be translated into this new work from home world. For instance, if you had your lunches at a specific time each day, maybe you can adapt those to the same time of day while you're working from home. If you had team meetings that really worked for you in the original work at the office world, you can adapt those strategies to the work from home world. But I think you also need to take some extra time to understand and really embrace that changing routines is hard, even under the best of circumstances, and that this is going to take all of us a while to build new routines around working from home. So above all of this, give you and your team some patience around, let's understand that this is hard. For most of us, working from home is new. Let's create maybe one new or two new work routines at a time, see how they land, and then adapt from there.
Yeah, I think that's really good, knowing that you're not going to nail it right out of the gate, just like any other routine you're trying to set, whether it's a new workout routine or a totally new system of how the world is operating. And I think for me, one thing that's been really helpful is, it's day by day. And so I've been jotting down in a little notebook, like, oh, that was kind of sticky today. Maybe I want to think of a solution to that, tomorrow or longer term. Like, you can't see it right now, but my laptop is sitting on a stack of magazines. So it's like, that might be something I want to get some equipment for, or, I'm with my two other roommates. And so we need to have really tight agreements about when we're cleaning the house and, noises. So making sure that no one's bumping jams in the shower while I'm trying to record this, and making those adjustments and agreements, and knowing that there will be awkward moments, but, I think just taking it piece by piece is really, and celebrating the wins.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that was interesting to me is my team does a lot of events, so we're pretty used to working remotely anyway. And I thought going into this, like, oh, this will be fine for us, no big deal. And so we just kept our one weekly Monday morning meeting as our only scheduled team meeting over the course of the week. And by midweek, I was hearing from my teammates saying, like, I'm lonely, I miss seeing you guys. And so we shifted strategies midweek and actually added more just informal check-ins to happen on Wednesdays and Fridays in addition to our regular Monday meetings. So it's things like this, although we might set out a new routine, know that we'll probably need to adapt it as we go.
Awesome. So another question we're seeing a lot of is, and this can maybe speak to your productivity guru days. So how do you stay focused on work amidst the daily news and updates? And how do you strike that balance?
It's tough because I think all of us feel the need to stay informed as to what's going on. And certainly the news seems to be changing day by day and hour by hour. So I totally get the urge to want to stay on top of things. So I think we need to balance that urge along with the fact that we still need to get work done and feel like we're still productive human beings and not just 24/7 news junkies. So what I suggest is setting a couple times throughout the day when you say like, okay, this is going to be my news check-in time. For me, I'm trying to keep it to a few minutes before work and a few minutes after. And maybe if I happen to have some bonus time at lunch, I might just check the news briefly. But I think you need to figure out like how much news do you really need to take in order to feel like you are on top of or as on top of things as possible right now without feeling like you need to be plugged in every moment. What I've seen is the more you check the news in general, the more anxiety inducing it becomes. So there isn't really a net benefit to you, especially if you're already essentially locked in your house, as most of us in many parts of the country are. So it might be worth it for you to just think about what feels like the right amount of news for me to check and what times of day can I actually do that.
Totally. I've definitely been setting some, morning and evening times to check in on that. But, if there are major headlines, it's kind of hard to miss those. For me, I think, and this is kind of going back to, how can I set a routine is I think in addition to following on, the exact current events, there are a lot of other really amazing pieces of art to consult we've never been through this situation before, but this isn't the first time humanity has been in, um, kind of a weird moment like this. So I've been leaving myself time to read and, stay tuned in. That way, there are a lot of really amazing artists and authors that have already kind of noodled on topics like this and how the isolation feels, or, that we're all kind of in this together, even though we maybe can't see it or feel that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like finding the balance between immediate current events and then also kind of reflections people have had throughout time.
Yeah, I think it's useful also, although the tendency right now is to look at like what's the latest bad news that's coming out. It's helpful to balance it with some more positive news. Believe it or not, there are still other good things happening in the world, and especially people working on solutions to problems. So check out news sources that, not to be Pollyanna-ish about it, but balance your news intake between the negative and the positive, and I think you'll have a much better experience of what's happening in the world, and that you'll have a more positive feeling throughout your day.
Absolutely. So another question that we've gotten is folks want to know about how we decide to communicate in Slack versus Asana, and maybe what some of those conventions look like. So I know for me, like you saw when I was demoing my profile, I kind of set that up right there. But in general at Asana, we use Slack for quick communications or just kind of like types of conversations maybe you're kicking off or just need to get unblocked really quickly, whereas we see Asana as the place where work lives. So quick random questions, not a big deal, but maybe if it's something that's like, oh, that's actually going to take me a while to figure out, I like creating tasks for that, so that way it's connected to other tasks and projects and not just kind of like sitting off alone somewhere. Or it's also really important to take things to Asana when a final decision has been communicated or you've gotten feedback, and making sure that that's all in context with the task. So that's one way I think about it. And in addition to the Slack integration, we also have Outlook and Gmail integrations that work more or less the same way. So you can transfer what's in your email into Asana and vice versa. So that's a nice way to, as teams learn and figure this out, or maybe you get a really massive project request via email and you're like, ooh, like let's take this into Asana. The integrations can help make that a little smoother. So any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I agree. I think regardless of what your tool set is, it's really about you listing out with your team, here are our tools, what is each one going to be used for? So it's less about making decisions on the fly and more about here are the guidelines we've agreed on together and sticking to those. Similar to
Absolutely.
like what we've done at Asana.
Totally. All right, so I think we have time for one or two more questions. So for Josh, how much flexibility do you give the team in setting their working hours, especially when working remote, and do you require any hours to ensure there's overlap, and how are you thinking about that as a manager?
Good question. I think it's important to have some overlap so that questions can get answered in real time. Again, my team is distributed. I have a set of team members here in San Francisco, along with a team member in London and other team members in Dublin. And so we have a limited window when all of us can have real-time overlap. So we have set a time every morning where there's going to be some overlap, morning time in San Francisco and late afternoon, early evening in Europe, where we can communicate live. We haven't set like specific, like everyone needs to be at their desks from 9 to 5, but generally speaking, our work agreement is for the bulk of the business day, we will be available. If one of us needs to step out, go take care of an errand, get groceries, get some fresh air, go for a walk, we just let each other know in Slack and just say like, hey, I'm gonna sign off for a little bit, I'll be back on later. One of the nice things that we've begun practicing since we've been working from home is we all say hi to each other in our Slack channel in the morning. And when we are signing off for the day, we just wish everyone good night, relax, go have fun, enjoy your time off for the evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Just like common courtesy that you would have if you were sitting next to each other, we've introduced into this new virtual workspace essentially.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, again, you said it well earlier in the webinar, it's all about that communication. So, all right, so last lightning question. How can you bring more joy and humor into your workday while working remotely?
That's a great question. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially I work on the community team. Our whole stock and trade is connecting with people and having fun and enjoyment around teamwork, collaboration, and productivity. So I think a lot about how we can inject that into our remote work experience. And I think a lot of that is really about the connection. How do we build connection, even if it's a virtual connection? So again, one of the things that I've implemented with my team is this more like informal, few times a week hangout so that we can just say like, hey, what did you watch on TV last night? Like I can see people's pets. And one of the delightful things that's happened as a result of everyone working from home is literally all of us are at home now, including our spouses, partners, kids, pets, literally everyone. So I've gotten to see where people live. Like I can see Nikki's room right now. She can see my tiny apartment. We can see and meet other people's spouses and partners, even if they're just walking by in the background in the middle of a call. It's nice. It's humanizing for everyone. So I think that's one really enjoyable thing that we shouldn't try to hide. We should instead accept. I know there's been this a lot of chatter in online articles about like how to make sure your workspace at home is essentially separated from your real life. Guess what, folks? This is real life right now. So I think it's better to just embrace it and even do really fun things like have lunch with your coworkers virtually. Like we did this recently, I think just a couple days ago on Monday, and I got to see what people made for themselves. They got to see that I, as an adult, can no longer feed myself because I'm used to being fed at work. And they got to see my peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I was eating. But it's stuff like this that just injects the humanity back into the situation, and it makes it more enjoyable. And it reduces that feeling of I'm here alone doing my work.
Totally. One thing that I saw our design team do, so they use Figma, a collaborative design tool, and they had a virtual water cooler where they would just drag and drop funny images and just kind of like an async way of communicating through images that was super funny. And I also think, to your point, injecting the humanity back into it, it's like, yeah, it's important to have the separation between when you're working and when you're home, but like I'm standing at my desk and you can see my room, and that's just how it is. And I think that's real, and that helps me feel more connected to my team, and they can get a little glimpse into my life. So set clear boundaries, but also those boundaries are constantly in flux. And I've enjoyed all the kind of like bloopers with kids and dogs running through the video screens, or people setting backgrounds that are really great. So just try and find the laughs and try and find the humanity.
Yeah, embrace the fact that like we are all humans who are navigating something new together. And part of what that means is we actually get to see into people's lives in a way that we didn't before. So enjoy it. Enjoy it because it's something that we didn't get the chance to experience.
Well, we are out of time for this particular webinar, but the good news is if your question didn't get answered or you still want to continue the discussion, you can head to our community forum, chat with other customers. We'll be there as well. And as always, you'll get a recording of this webinar as well as the slides once we're done. So with that, I will leave everyone to continue with the rest of their day. And we want to thank you so much for attending and bearing with us, bearing with your team. We're all in this together. So until next time, thanks for joining us.